Origin dollar, OUSD. What is it for those who don't know in simple terms?
Yeah, Origin Dollar, OUSD, is a brand new stablecoin that allows users to earn yield automatically and passively while they're just holding it in their wallets. So for the casual crypto observer, you may have heard about decentralized finance, DeFi. It's one of the new ways that a lot of people that are participating in cryptocurrencies are earning yield. And right now, these processes are typically pretty complicated. You have to use many different applications. You often have to stake your tokens, pay a lot of gas fees, unstake them, move them around into different strategies on different platforms. And the idea is OUSD solves all of this for you. All you do is you go ahead and either mint some OUSD or you buy some OUSD off of Uniswap. And then as it's sitting in your wallet, the OUSD protocol is actually taking your initial capital and investing it for you across all these various DeFi strategies and earning a yield. And so if you invest 10,000 OUSD today, a year from now, you might have 12,000 OUSD. And again, you don't have to do anything. All you have to do is hold OUSD in your wallet. It makes DeFi 10 times simpler and easier and way more accessible. Our mission here is to make DeFi accessible to the mainstream and the masses. That's why we're super excited about OUSD.
Let's play like this because I got my brain is split in two. It's like the DeFi or crypto people and the non-crypto
Yeah.
people. It's just a completely different way to do that. So let me translate this. What you speak to the crypto people who are going to listen to this, so they understand, that all the basics, and I kind of translate it for the boomers or all the
Sure.
people who are not in crypto. Basically, stable coins are a kind of cryptocurrency which is always worth $1, more or less, $1, 102 or 98 cents. It tries to peg to the dollar, solving the Bitcoin volatility problem in a way. So you can use it for commerce because if I send you 1,000 OUSD, they're going to be worth $1,000 today and 2 months from now. That's one basic point, stable coins. And people may have heard about digital currencies from central banks, the upcoming digital dollar, digital euro, etc. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. Now, they've been existing for a few years already, but the new thing with OUSD is that it takes a recent development in crypto, which is DeFi, decentralized finance, in which you can put your money to work for you. You borrow it, lend it to people, and you earn interest. But this is very complicated. It's very expensive in terms of gas fees of paying for the network, and it's very risky at the same time. So the magic which the origin dollar does is that you don't have to do anything. Origin does this for you. So you put $10,000 in instead of the bank account where the interest is 0.00000, you put them in origin dollar, and a year from now you have $12,000, maybe 13, maybe 14, maybe 11, who knows? So unfathomable yield, interest. This is like out of the world. It's so much that it makes it unbelievable to people who are not in crypto. So that's the first stumbling block. Let's say, how can you pay that? So let me ask you, from the non-crypto person point of view, how do you pay these incredible interests?
Yeah, so I just wanted to stress again, since you mentioned that the interest is actually very high, right? So as you mentioned, in traditional finance right now, the interest rates might be 0.002, 0.001, something like that, right? We're multiple magnitudes of orders of magnitude higher right now, where we're able to deliver double digits APYs. So anywhere between 15, 20%, sometimes up to 50, 60, or even 70% annualized yields a year. And this is based on different market conditions. But what happens is there's a lot of demand for these underlying crypto assets. So you mentioned stablecoins earlier. There's a number of stablecoins that are very popular right now. Tether USDT is one of them. USDC, which is backed by both Circle and Coinbase. Coinbase, a lot of people should know as one of the most reputable, U.S. exchanges, global exchanges. And there's also DAI, which is the decentralized stablecoin of choice. And so there's a lot of demand for people to use these stable coins, whether for leveraging in positions or borrowing for other purposes, to use as collateral, et cetera. And so there's a number of these DeFi protocols that allow you to deposit stable coins, and then they're paying very, very healthy interest rates on top of that. And so again, OUSD will run these strategies for you on your behalf. It'll aggregate funds from all OUSD users and then effectively deploy them to these strategies and earn interest at double-digit APYs for our users. So we think it's very, very compelling because, again, compared to a traditional bank account where you're basically earning nothing right now, and you're also potentially getting devalued as many central banks are printing lots and lots of currency, especially in these COVID times. In contrast, you can move your money to OUSD and let it earn double-digit APYs. Again, we've seen as high as 60, 70, even I think like 80% APY recently. Now that may or may not be sustainable, but certainly in the 20% range or so, we think is highly sustainable for the upcoming future.
To clarify, this interest is not paid by Origin. This is not like investment you do for marketing. This interest is paid by people indirectly who want to borrow crypto to use it for other things. Let's keep it like that. So maybe investing, let's say.
Correct.
Yeah. So as long as the market is ready to pay a lot for some crypto lending, there's high interest. And what you're doing is you are using these market conditions to pass these high yields to, let's say, your customers, people who use Origin dollars.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And OUSD. OUSD is actually just a set of decentralized smart contracts. So it's a protocol. And so anyone can actually interact with these smart contracts on their own. We've branded it as the Origin dollar, and the Origin team is working on continuing to advance the product, promote the product, and upgrade the product. But it's really meant to be a decentralized protocol. So we don't serve as the bank. We just serve as the tool set and the application that allows individual users to take advantage of everything in decentralized finance right now.
This is incredibly important and incredibly hard to explain. So let me ask you, if Origin tomorrow disappears, what happens to this smart contract and to this money?
So Origin, the company, can actually disappear, but Origin dollar, OUSD, can still operate. The smart contracts are deployed onto the Ethereum blockchain. Someone else can come over and create another front-end interface. Experienced individuals can also interact with the contracts themselves without any type of application. The funds will still be safe in the smart contract, earning yield. And our goal is to become more and more decentralized over time and to have even less of a hand in OUSD as we go forward. So today, our software developers, our engineers, and our product designers are all working to upgrade the product to make it even better, to use more strategies, earn more yield, maintain safety, et cetera. But over time, the next couple quarters, our intention is to basically give this completely away to community governance and allow the community to govern how the protocol works in the future.
So this is really, again, hard to understand for people who are not used to crypto. What we're talking about here is a set of smart contracts, which is basically, allow me to put it this way, it's like a digital being on its own, of which you plan to lose completely control. Like all you people, well, this thing is going to be there maybe forever, and people can do front ends for it. They can change the way you see it on your browser, but what's behind is going to be completely independent. And I know it's almost impossible to understand if you don't know about crypto, but that's the core of it, because
one way to think about it,
hard and so interesting at the same time, right?
Yeah, one interesting and potentially easier analogy is to think about the internet itself. Right, the internet itself is not owned by one particular company or government. It is a decentralized network, right? It's the biggest one, in fact, where various people, billions of people from across the world can access the internet, information on the internet, and there's a set of underlying protocols that allows for the communication of information, the passing of data, et cetera. And so in the same way, these new cryptocurrency-centric networks are being built. that are designed to be decentralized and allow many individual participants to both use and govern them in the future.
Maybe, yeah, that's a good analogy. Maybe we could say Origin Dollar is running on its own internet, and you cannot turn this off, basically. In the same way as there's no red button to turn off the internet, there's not going to be probably a red button to turn off or change OUSD. But let me ask a question which is a bit more from the crypto side. Today on Origin Dollar, on the contract you deployed, there are some variables you can still change, right? So right now you still have control. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. So right now we're in the early phases of OUSD, and there's essentially 4 phases that we've outlined to get to fully decentralized governance. And right now we do have some control in the sense that we're still applying new yield earning strategies, and we're still introducing safety measures to make sure user funds are secure, and we're still in a way setting up the infrastructure and the scaffolding so that this thing can live on its own in the next couple of quarters. So we're still in phase 1, but we would hope to rapidly get to phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. I won't go into details into exactly what is in each phase, but basically by phase 4, the entire protocol will be decentralized. And so people that have a stake in the OUSD protocol by holding a separate asset called the Origin token, OGN. It's the governance token, right? If you have OGN as a governance token, you'll be able to vote on different proposals for changing strategies or changing different types of parameters around risk and reward and a bunch of other features. But this will all be decentralized and be owned by the community at that point.
So today we still need to trust you, and we're going into a place where we won't need to trust you anymore because everything is managed by the network, basically.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about the hack because it was a very important moment, and I'm sure it's been really hard for you guys, and I'm really happy to see you on the other side of this, probably much stronger than before. So can you tell us about the hack?
Yeah, so while OUSD was still in the alpha stages, right? So we had just released a product, and we have at that point had not, finished internal security measures and had not yet hired external security measures. We're essentially in testing phase, but we did begin accepting some user funds, and actually there were a lot of very enthusiastic users that actually put some capital into the OUSD protocol before it was fully battle tested. And unfortunately, in November, we were hacked and we did suffer a loss of user funds at that time. It was a very, trialing period, but I think it actually has made us a lot stronger as a result. And it's always much better to get hacked or deal with security vulnerabilities when you're still small in this like alpha stage, as opposed to when you've already, reached the masses and have hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of capital under management. So we did suffer a loss. And a couple of things happened both internally and externally. So internally, it taught us that we had to tighten up our security measures as well as get additional security audits. And so we went through a rigorous process there. Had 2 external audit firms go through our contracts. The third one has been hired, and we'll be doing another review in the next month or so. We also dramatically revamped the way that we deploy code and review code internally. With a huge focus on security. And so now we feel, many times much more confident in our product and have very recently relaunched after the hack. The other thing that was really important is, which is pretty unusual in the cryptocurrency and decentralized finance spaces, we made the decision that we wanted to compensate early users for the funds that were lost, even though it was an alpha product and it wasn't quite ready for general consumption. And we had put on the warnings of, hey, you probably should be careful, and this is still an experiment. Don't put any funds in that you're not ready to lose. That being said, we feel that based on where we want to head in the future, as well as our company culture and ethos, we wanted to do right by our users. And so we developed a compensation plan that makes all of our users whole, and launched this very recently. So if you were an affected OUSD user, you should be able to claim your OUSD funds as well as potentially OGN, which is the governance token associated with OUSD. It was definitely a very challenging, 1.5, 2 months for us. One of the things I'm really, really proud of is just how strong our team was during this period of time. Everyone was very resolute and composed and very action oriented. We dealt with the crisis effectively. We dealt with our security vulnerabilities. We relaunched OUSD, and we're also adding a number of additional features such as optional insurance and new strategies to make OUSD a product that's stronger than ever. And I was also very pleasantly surprised at the responsiveness the response from the community and our investor base. Everyone was super supportive, and so we're very, very thankful for the entire Origin community for patiently waiting out our compensation plan, as well as the relaunch, as well as our many different Origin token holders that have been very supportive of us as we went through this trialing period. In fact, I think in the short term, this thing, was definitely, something that was a challenging learning process. But I believe in the long term, it's going to be something that we look back on as a defining moment for our project, a moment where we became more resolute, stronger, more prepared, and better equipped to build OUSD to be a massively impactful product over the next few years.
To give some context to people who are not in DeFi, hacks happen all the time. What is a hack? It's basically somebody who can get into the smart contract, play with it in a way, and find a vulnerability and steal the money. And when it happened to Origin, it happened to others. Like, I think there were a couple of weeks with maybe 5 or 6 like this. So it's kind of normal. This is not like something not expected. And when people invest into these things, they should know that it can happen. So it was still a surprise because you really hope that doesn't happen, but it happened. You made people whole or almost. Actually, whole, it would depend on when people are able to get the Origin token out in a year from now. Is that correct? So depending on the price. So if the Origin if the OGN a year from now is over a certain price, I think 16 cents of a dollar, then people will be made whole. Is that correct?
It's actually less than that. Yeah, we gave them, so if it's something I believe around like 12 cents or so, they'll be made 100% whole. Anything above that, they'll be making more than 100% compensation.
Okay.
So currently things are looking pretty good.
Yeah. And so in a year from now, we hope to be over that 12 cents. That would actually would be very bad price, 12 cents a year from now. But who knows, right? The price depends on many other aspects also, not only on what you're doing, but the whole market. But we are in
we're very confident that we're not only going to make our affected users whole, but that there's a pretty good chance that they're going to end up well ahead.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Once compensation is fully distributed.
So, sorry, I'm going ahead with the context. So this happened to you, and this happened to other companies or anonymous organizations, and it's very normal that people lose money, and the people who launch the project say, "Well, bad luck, right? It happened." So you behave differently. You spend your own money to refund, which is very good, and I think it gives a lot of credibility to the whole project. And let's say banks are not so different. There's been cases in which banks have just not refunded money, like in Cyprus, for instance, a few years ago. So I'd say in terms of credibility, it's been good, all considered. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The only way to see if a stable coin or in general a DeFi project is safe, it's when there's a lot of money for a lot of time and it's not being hacked. Because you mentioned you didn't do the audits and everything, but you can do all the audits you want. But if there's no money in it for people to come and try to steal, you never know, right? So my view is that the more time passes and the more money gets into Origin Dollar, the more we're going to feel safe. Is that correct as a reading?
Yeah, as a general principle, I would say that's absolutely true. I don't know that there's ever a case where any particular product or project is 100% foolproof, right? But the probability that it's not hackable or the funds are not going to be potentially exposed absolutely increase the longer those contracts are live and the more capital that's in there. When there's a lot of capital, it's essentially a target. And if people haven't figured out how to take that money away already, they probably will never be able to. And so, like, it is more common for projects to get hacked in the very early days when it's still in an experimental or alpha stage. Usually thereafter, as the contracts have been upgraded and become more robust, and there are more community members participating and more funds in, the safety absolutely increases. Yeah.
So yeah, there's never 100%. It's always a risk reward calculation, because in your bank it's maybe almost 100% safe, almost, but it's this famous melting block of ice, so the value is going down. In origin dollar, yeah, the risk is probably higher than the bank account, but there's a lot of returns, so the API is very high. So who would you suggest to invest or buy origin dollars today, and how much in percent of their net worth today? And then also maybe later on. What makes you feel comfortable here?
Yeah, so we think of our ideal user as someone who already understands a little bit about cryptocurrency, but is not necessarily the most experienced DeFi investor, right? We want to make DeFi easier for everyone, bring it from a couple thousand individuals that are very actively participating to hundreds of thousands or millions of users,
Sorry,
right? So if you're,
sorry to interrupt you, this is a couple of thousand the users of DeFi?
I would say, like, the more sophisticated, like, yield farming users, there's probably a couple 100,000 that have in total interacted with DeFi, right? They've, like, used Uniswap, for example. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're very sophisticated. And so I think, anywhere from, like, outside of that very inner circle would be a good target audience for OUSD, up to the millions of users that have some exposure to cryptocurrency, whether it's using a Coinbase or a Binance, but individuals that may not be super familiar with DeFi yet. Again, we want to make it as easy as possible. So all you have to do is buy OUSD or mint OUSD, and then you just hold it in your wallet, and it automatically earns yield for you. You don't have to stake it. You don't have to lock it up. You don't have to move your funds around. Everything should be automatic and passive. And we think that simplified user experience is going to be a big differentiator in the long term.
Let me clarify the mint USD thing, because you can buy them on the market, or you can mint them. You can create them. So you put $1,000 in maybe USDT, and you get 1,000 OUSD, and the USDT goes in your treasury or in the smart contract, and you mint. You basically create new origin dollars. This is the minting thing. So about minting, or in general, is it like better? Is there an advantage for people to get in early in terms of API? Like, is it good coming now?
Yeah. There is definitely an advantage. The earlier you get in, the better your returns are going to be. It's easier to earn high returns on a initial smaller base of capital. So as we get more and more users, it is possible that the APYs will decline, but they will still be 100 times or 200 times better than what you would get in a traditional savings account.
That's easy.
Yeah.
0.01, like even 1% is 100 times better, isn't it?
But yeah. I mean, we'll be shooting for double-digit APYs even at steady state. Yeah.
Okay, double digit. That's a good benchmark here. So it's actually good to get in here. If I had to, like, because I'm always exposed to people who are not in crypto, and I see the opportunities they're losing. So a couple of years ago, I would say, well, maybe Bitcoin, but then they get scared of the volatility. Now is Ether, but origin dollar is actually an interesting point, because it's like a bank account, but you get more interest, and of course there's a bit more risk. If I had to tell friends or other people, get some origin dollar, so you get into crypto in an easier way, maybe. Okay. I'm thinking $1,000, something like this. Not 10,000, not 100. 100, they're gonna forget, and they're gonna lose it. At 10,000, they're gonna maybe focus too much on it, or maybe lose the keys, etc. So is like $1,000 a good number here for somebody new in crypto as a new crypto user?
I think it depends a bit on your desire to earn returns, what your risk profile is like, as well as just how much about crypto you know. But I would say that's probably a good starting point. If you go a little bit lower, like you said, you'll probably forget about it. But I wouldn't say that like 10,000 is necessarily too high either. So we've had people just test out the product with $100 first, but we've also had individuals put in $1 million into OUSD right away. And so there's a wide range. I think it depends on your personal comfort levels, but somewhere between 1,000 or 10,000 is probably a good starting point if you're not too familiar with it yet. And then as you see the results and as you see it growing, if you have more capital, then we obviously would encourage you to deposit more, because we do believe we can vastly outperform your existing traditional finance banking accounts.
Today, we are still at the phase, don't put more than you can lose. That's correct.
Today, I would say we're a little bit beyond that, but it's still, yes, in
but
more of
I'm
like
still
a beta
considering
phase. Yeah.
new users, they will lose the keys and stuff like this. A friend of mine.
Yeah, yeah. So I would still proceed with some caution. But in terms of what we've done on our side, we've made the product multiple times more robust and secure. And again, have done multiple rounds of external audits and testing. So we're feeling very, very good about the product right now.
Yeah, I just realized, I mean, we know this, but we tend to forget it. It's not easy to deal with these wallets and stuff. A friend of mine who got, I think, 1,600 uni or 400 uni, sorry, which is worth $4,000 now. After me explaining to him for 1 hour how to move them from his wallet to the other wallet in MetaMask, he sent them to the contract of Uniswap. So he lost them. And
no.
Yeah, and it's so easy for us, right? You just click there, transfer between accounts. It's so easy. But then when somebody comes from outside, for them it's not easy. So I think today the biggest risk in general in crypto or is not even the smart contracts or the rest. It's people interacting with these new, not very usable interfaces. Even if MetaMask, I mean, it seems so usable to us probably, but it's not really. It's not today.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of user experience challenges that the entire industry needs to work on before we can bring cryptocurrency to the global mainstream, right? So the number of people that still haven't interacted with cryptocurrencies far, outpaces those that have. And even for those people that have, many of them are still testing the waters. And so there's a lot of growth, right, over the next 5-10 years. The good news is there are a lot of new ways that cryptocurrencies are being integrated with traditional financial applications and services. For example, PayPal recently announced a big move in cryptocurrency where they're allowing people to purchase cryptocurrency directly in PayPal, and that company has hundreds of millions of users. We see more and more institutions going into Bitcoin and carrying Bitcoin on their balance sheet, in fact, and investing in that, including some more traditional pension funds and endowment funds and things like that. There's also a number of tools that are making cryptocurrencies easier to use for the average consumer. So there are now Fiat On-Ramps that make it easier for you to purchase small amounts of cryptocurrency, whether with your credit card or debit card or savings accounts directly with an ACH. And there are also off-ramps. So there's new products like debit cards that are tied to your cryptocurrency wallets that allow you to spend down your cryptocurrency at tens of thousands of or hundreds of thousands of merchants that accept Visa or MasterCard. Actually, I think that the number is probably like tens of millions in that case. But there are debit card products, there are on-ramp products. There's a lot of additional solutions to make it easier and easier, and in certain cases, even make it so that the cryptocurrency piece is abstracted away, and instead you're just using a very polished fintech app that just works really well, but it's powered by cryptocurrencies. So there's a lot of improvement that's needed in the industry, but we are getting closer and closer every single day. And so I think it's an inevitability that products like OUSD and other DeFi products will start taking big market share away from traditional finance in the next few years.
Let me ask you a question. Daniel is a developer in Origin. He was
Yeah.
writing this in your Discord, and I didn't understand it. So he says on the yield side, this is just the start of the supply that we want Origin Dollar to have. We are currently planning continuing to ensure that there's plenty of funds in Uniswap for people to easily trade into OUSD in the near term. And as a side effect, it leads to a high level of boost to the API. So he's saying we're trying to have the pool in Uniswap bigger, so there's less slippage, there's like more stable. How is the API connected to that? Maybe it's obvious, I don't get it.
Yeah. So let me provide some broader context first. So Uniswap is a application that's very popular in cryptocurrency and decentralized finance right now. Essentially, what it allows you to do is trade one type of cryptocurrency for another type of cryptocurrency, different pairs, and it supports tens of thousands of permutations where you can trade one token into another. And so we have a pool on Uniswap as well, where you can trade into OUSD using other stablecoins. And so one of the main objectives we have is increasing the size of that pool, liquidity in that pool. And what that means is it becomes cheaper and easier for you to get OUSD at true market prices. If the liquidity is low, then the price might move more when you're buying in and out. But if the liquidity is high, then the price should not move at all. Now, the side effect that Daniel was talking about is OUSD is like a very novel financial instrument. And so when it's sitting in a normal Ethereum wallet, right, like your wallet, Luca, we will be actually accruing interest to that wallet. And this process is known as a rebasing process. So again, let's say you have 10,000, you might end up with 12,000 units in 6 months or 15,000 units in a year. Something like that. All you have to do is keep it in your normal Ethereum wallet, you'll get more and more units of it. Now, when OUSD is in these smart contracts, right? So the Uniswap smart contract is a special smart contract that allows you to trade OUSD with USDT. Now, when OUSD is in these liquidity pools, we turn off interest. So the liquidity pool itself is not earning yield. Okay. So when we have OUSD in these liquidity pools, and by the way, we're providing much of the liquidity ourselves as Origin, the company, then all that extra yield is given to our users such as yourself that are holding OUSD in your normal wallets. So imagine a situation where, let's say there's $100 million worth of OUSD created, which is backed by $100 million worth of Tether, USDC, and DAI. This $100 million is now being deployed to other strategies to earn yield, let's say at 20% APY. However, now let's say $50 million of that OUSD is being supplied by Origin as well as other liquidity providers into these contracts such as Uniswap. So that OUSD is not earning yield, but the other $50 million that's sitting in your wallet as well as any other user's wallets is still earning the yield that the 100 million is generating. So you're effectively earning double the amount of yield. And that's why we say there's a boosted yield. And so your 20% across the board will turn into 40% for individual users that are holding it in wallets like yourself, Luca.
Very clear. So, but this doesn't encourage me to take my USD and put them in a pool.
Yeah, for the average user, for the average user, it's designed, you just hold your OUSD and it passively and automatically earns income for you. You don't have to do anything.
So this is to make it clearer and more interesting to, which is the value proposition of the OUSD. Just keep them in your wallet. That's where you earn a lot. Because the moment you say, okay, if you put them in Uniswap and you still earn yield, then you're making it more complicated. Was that the reasoning behind that? Like to make it more like simple for the average?
Yeah. We wanted to make OUSD as simple to use as possible as a cryptocurrency product, with our eyes set on getting a bunch of new users that may have not used DeFi products before.
Because otherwise, it's in my wallet. I say, but if I put in Uniswap in the pool, I'm gonna make more. So it will become this thing which is great in your wallet but better somewhere else. And you go back to the DeFi mess where you can do a million things to earn more, and then at the end.
The idea is to keep it super simple. Just get some OUSD by minting or buying, hold it in your wallet, and it's automatically earning interest for you at very, very compelling rates.
Okay. In marketplaces, like, because you started as a market protocol for marketplaces,
Yeah.
I think, and then probably because you saw what happened in DeFi and all the action is there, you decided to get into this. But the Origin dollar is probably the best instrument for commerce, because not only, first of all, it's not volatile, so you're not paying Bitcoin or Ether. DAI was the next best, DAI or other stable coins were the next best thing, but they don't, if you use them for commerce, you're not earning any yields. OUSD is even better. If you get paid in USD, you start earning interest, and then you can pay somebody else, and this person will get interest too. So it seems like the perfect instrument, which was actually missing in marketplaces. Was this the reasoning behind the decision to do something which is a bit out of your plan?
Yeah, so we think that payments is a very, very crucial part of decentralized commerce, right? And so as an overall company mission, we're working on peer-to-peer commerce, enabling buyers and sellers to transact on the blockchain without intermediaries, thereby allowing them to save on fees, allowing them to basically conduct business the way that they want to, and plus also enable people that are currently unbanked, almost 2 billion people, to participate in the digital internet economy. And so when we started thinking about OUSD, we realized that this could be the perfect way to really accelerate our broader ambitions, and also start taking market share away from traditional marketplaces and e-commerce providers. One way to think about it right now is if you're an existing e-commerce merchant or an individual supplier of some good or service, you're probably accepting payment in a couple different ways. Let's say credit cards, right? You're getting charged 2.9% plus additional potentially from Shopify payments or any other type of merchant processor, or you're potentially taking net 30 payments where you're not getting your money for 30 days. And especially if you're dealing with international commerce, there's more amounts of fee that will take fees all along the way, right? International wire transfers, all that. Now, cryptocurrencies are a great way to reduce those fees because you're just dealing with the existing cryptocurrency networks. And I can send you, $1 million worth of OUSD or Tether with very, very little fees, right? Direct to your wallet, Luca, and it would just take, 30 seconds, something like that. And so cryptocurrencies are a great way to do peer-to-peer payments. Now, what's even better with OUSD as a merchant is if you accept OUSD, not only do you get paid without those, let's say, 2.9% credit card fees, but then you can also instantly start earning at 20%, 30% APY on the capital that just came in. This gives you much better operating cash flow. It allows you to, reinvest your earnings rather than just have cash sitting on the books. And this will potentially make it easier for your business to achieve profitability. By the same token, we're really, really excited about how OUSD might go viral sometime in the near future, because if I'm paying you as a friend, let's say I owe you money for taking me out to dinner, or again, the buyer's merchant relationship, every single time that someone is paying with OUSD, the recipient will receive OUSD and be like, wait a minute, this is great. I'm earning interest right away. I should use more of this. And maybe I should introduce my friends to it, and I'll send them some OUSD. And so we're very excited about the viral prospects of OUSD once we get more integrations with existing merchants, potentially build some payment adapters for existing platforms, things like that. And if we can push really hard with OUSD as a preferred payment method, then that will also be a tool that will bring new merchants, new buyers, new users onto some of our existing commerce products as well. And so there's like a very potentially powerful flywheel between OUSD, our payments product, and our existing commerce products that allow for decentralized storefronts and marketplaces.
So to clarify, the seller gets paid in USD and he has zero costs. The buyer
Correct.
has the gas cost. So the buyer pays for the Ether, which could be $3, $2, $5, depending on the congestion of the network. But the seller pays nothing, zero. While
Correct.
usually he paid or she paid a few percentile points to the credit cards. Like Airbnb, for instance, when you book a place abroad, charges an extra 3% of exchange rate. I've seen even 5. So, and these costs tend to be a bit hidden to the seller. There's a lot of money which leaves the table when credit cards are involved, and the reason is that there's, if I book your Airbnb or whatever, and they send you money, before the money gets to you, it's been through so many hands and many companies. It's mind blowing. We don't see them, but it's like it's a whole, the whole group of leechers coming and sucking money out of it. So it's amazing. And once you get into stable coins, you go like, no one, just just the network. You just pay for the network.
Right. And the network fees will get lower and lower over time as well.
Sorry?
The network fees will get lower and lower over time as well. Right now they are high because Ethereum is still in its version 1. But there are scaling solutions and efficient gas solutions, layer 2 networks, a little bit more technical. But in the coming 2-3 years, it'll be even cheaper to send cryptocurrencies, and it should be a virtual non-issue at that point.
Do you have any strategy right now for making USD transfers cheaper through layer 2 or side chains or anything else? Or you just wait for what happens with Ethereum?
Yeah, so currently we're focused mostly on getting OUSD to be a more ubiquitous product across a number of DeFi platforms, as well as working on some pretty interesting potential partnership integrations to get it into the hands of more mainstream users. And so we're mostly focused on distribution of OUSD and usage of OUSD first, as opposed to the Ethereum scaling and gas fees, although it's possible we may do some R&D in that area as OUSD scales.
Well, when people say that it's very expensive to send cryptocurrency on the Ethereum network, what I normally answer is like, no, it's really cheap if you send a lot. So if you send $1 million, this is extremely cheap. If you send $100,000, it's basically free. If you send $1,000, it's still very cheap. It gets expensive when you go down to maybe $1,000 or $500 or $100. Then yes,
correct.
If you send $10, it's too expensive. So it's basically, and as this progresses, as fees go down, it's going to be interesting for lower amounts. So
that's correct.
Okay. Now let's talk about the Origin token, because let me introduce the Origin token. It's the token you launched at the beginning, and which kind of represents the project. So if the general Origin project works well, the token works well. But now with the OUSD, we have new utility for this token. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's correct. So Origin token, ticker symbol OGN, is a multi-purpose token that has been launched on the Origin platform. And so that's our entire suite of products, right? And so OGN can be used in our commerce products, but the latest addition is that OGN is also the governance token, as well as the value accrual token for OUSD. So let's talk about those two details first. So by governance, what we mean is if you hold OGN, you will be able to place votes on the future direction of the Origin dollar protocol. So in the future, OGN holders will be able to vote on things like, what strategies the protocol should employ, different types of parameters, etc. And potentially whether OUSD takes fees from some of its users. Now, assuming that is true, that there will be some sort of small fee taken by the network, right? Not by us, the company, by the network for running this decentralized yield earning machine. Those fees will accrue to Origin token holders. And so by holding OGN, you'll benefit from the growth of OUSD. And the bigger we get OUSD, that means there will be more fees that are generated that then contribute to creating value for OGN, the Origin token holders. And so this creates a very interesting incentive mechanism where if you're an Origin token holder, OGN holder, you want to then get OUSD to be successful. You want to tell your friends about it. You want to get more and more people to use it. And as a OUSD holder, you likely also want to purchase some OGN so that you have governance voice as one of the holders of OUSD as well. And so there's an interplay between these two tokens. OGN is the token that will, again, govern OUSD and will accrue value from OUSD. And hopefully both of these tokens will perform very well in the future.
Okay, governance. Governance is a beast because we will have companies taking decisions, like, and especially in your case, you are a great team with a great track record, and I'm sure some people, come on, why are we giving decisions to the masses, to the mindless masses, right? And that's governance. Governance is democracy. Democracy is messy. Could you explain to us why you want to give the control away from you and potentially make it more, complicated and risky?
Yeah, well, so we think that something this important should not be owned by any single one entity, where we could be a potential point of failure. Look at the U.S. Fed, for example, right? So they're printing money like crazy right now because of the COVID situation, and that has some adverse effects, right? That's devaluing the U.S. dollar. It's making more countries consider whether that should be the world reserve currency. It means existing U.S. dollar holders have less purchasing power than they did before. And also the way that that money is being redistributed by our government is not really that fair in most people's eyes, right? A lot of it is going to businesses that may not need money, that have been lobbying with politicians, and it's not going into the hands of everyday citizens that are actually struggling, or small and medium businesses that are out of business right now. So there's a pretty big disagreement as to how those funds should be used. But because the U.S. government has this ability just to mint money on demand, then it's this central authority, right? And so we think the future of money should be decentralized. It shouldn't be owned by any one entity. It should be governed by the masses. And yeah, democracy is a bit messy. And that's why it's not 100% decentralized today. We still have to build additional features and upgrades to the protocol to ensure that it can last on its own, and that we define some of the important parameters that people will be voting on. But we've seen this done successfully in a number of cases already. So popular projects in decentralized finance like Compound and Synthetics have already moved to extremely decentralized models, where the governance token holders are voting on proposals and the companies themselves have taken a step back, right? And the idea is eventually the companies themselves don't need to be involved at all, and the systems can run by themselves. Like you have said, it does make things a little bit more complicated, but we think it makes it a much more sustainable, anti-fragile, resilient platform going forward. And so that's why we have our eyes set on accomplishing those goals sometime in the future.
So the trade-off is between fragility or solidity and like quality of decision or also speed. Like today you are fast, but you could be attacked, or you could fail, or whatever. Things can happen to you as a project, and everything goes down.
Right.
So yes, you're very effective, but there's this risk. When it's decentralized, when we decide, we Origin token holders decide, we may take wrong decisions, or we may take longer to decide, but nothing can stop the project anymore. So these are the two extremes.
Correct. And so it's and there's a spectrum in between, right? And that's why we say that we're going to take a progressive path to decentralization. It will happen in several phases versus, hey, we're just flipping a switch and now we're 100% decentralized, right? I think it does need to be like an iterative approach, but we hope to iterate through it as quickly as possible.
Some people say that when you start centralized and then you try to go towards decentralization, this never happens, but we've seen this happening. You mentioned.
Yeah, we've seen multiple cases where it's successfully happened, and we believe it will continue to happen.
Is this the corporation of the future, like something decentralized, managed by the network? Or is it going to be parallel to the traditional corporation? How do you see that in general in 10, 20 years?
So I think it depends on the type of problem you're trying to solve, right? Let's say I'm trying to build a cure for cancer. I probably want a few expert researchers as opposed to hundreds of millions of people voting on what is the R&D process, right? So that's a case where centralization, at least in decision making, is probably a better case. But when you're talking about global financial systems, decentralization is what we're betting on 1,000%, right? We've seen many parallel monetary systems across the existing world, right? Different governments have used and abused their own powers and have destroyed local economies, whether it's in Argentina or Venezuela. We're seeing, certainly some risks in what the U.S. is doing right now with the printing of ridiculous amounts of debt and devaluing of the U.S. dollar. We see, other countries trying to maintain hard pegs, but sometimes being unable to do so. And so we've seen a lot of data points where, centralized currencies are kind of working, but also when faced with certain events, sometimes black swan events, sometimes just gradual decline, these systems start failing. And so this new world of decentralized cryptocurrencies, granted it's still early and still very much an experiment, but I would, I'm very much betting my career as well as my net worth that these are more anti-fragile systems. They are going to be more sustainable systems, and they're going to be better systems in the next few years. And so when we're talking about payment systems, when we're talking about store of value and medium of exchange, we believe cryptocurrencies, ones that can reach global audiences, they're not defined by borders or governments or central banks. They're going to have huge upside and be absolutely transformative and disruptive to the global economies across the world.
We have a question from Giovanni. He's asking if the rebasements or the APY could go theoretically below zero.
The rebasing should always be positive. Now, there is a case where the underlying value of OUSD might change. So because OUSD is backed by USDT, USDC, or DAI, if one of these underlying stablecoins has an issue, then the value of OUSD would potentially lose its peg as well. But those are two slightly different issues.
Okay. When do you think the whole ecosystem is going to be ready for marketplaces? Because you had a experience for a year or a bit more with your own marketplace, which now is being suspended. What is missing for marketplaces to work today, or when is it gonna get? When are we gonna get there in general?
I still think that we're still very much focused on decentralized commerce. We're more focused on our OUSD product as well as our DShop product. DShop is a decentralized storefront that allows any merchant to sell to its consumers in a free and open source model. It's think of it as a decentralized Shopify competitor, and so we're still pushing very hard on those two fronts. The marketplace problem itself, where you have many buyers and many suppliers, is always a challenging one. And I think partly what we'll need before that is able to take off is I think we'll need to have more people using cryptocurrencies as payments. And this is where OUSD can be very beneficial in helping getting more merchants to accept OUSD. And we also need to have more people just like understanding the concept of cryptocurrencies in general. Fiat on-ramps will help because many people are starting in their native currencies and need to access cryptocurrencies to begin. And there will need to be improvements in things like decentralized identity and arbitration and things that bring trust when you get rid of these centralized intermediaries. There's a lot of really interesting R&D as well as live projects working on those. And so I still think this is inevitable, it may just take a little bit longer than everyone initially anticipated.
As usual, as every time, when a new technology comes to reality, we underestimate it, how big the impact is going to be, and we also underestimate the time it takes. So the whole crypto ecosystem is going to take longer than, in my opinion, than we anticipated, but it's going to be much bigger than we even were dreaming of at the beginning.
Yeah, that's very similar to my personal viewpoints. When I think of very disruptive technologies, right? If you not just cryptocurrencies, but you think of something like the internet itself, right? Yeah. These technologies grow in a very exponential way. And so they started off very small, and you can barely notice the growth rates. And then as they're growing exponentially, at some point they hit an inflection point. And when they hit that inflection point, and they really start growing exponentially, then all of a sudden it looks like all this stuff just happened, right? And in a very short amount of time, these technologies take over the world, essentially, right? That's what we saw with the internet, right? There was a quiet period of time where the initial protocols were being researched and developed. No one really heard about it. And then there was the late 90s boom, where there were a lot of internet companies that purported to be able to change the world. But then there was a crash because there wasn't actually as much widespread broadband adoption, and people weren't familiar with the user experiences yet. But then on that next wave, that's when you saw companies like Google, and then Amazon was able to survive the crash and really become the machine that it is now. And then later on, we had Facebook. We had all these other new platforms, including the place in the mobile internet now as well, right? And so a similar thing is going to happen with blockchain and cryptocurrency technologies. There was a lot of hype, I think, in the early days. In the first early days, it was pretty quiet, right? There were a lot of technologists and hobbyists playing around with Bitcoin, and then Ethereum launched. Not that many people knew about it. And then there was this big boom cycle in 2017 where there's a ton of hype. Everyone thought it was going to change the world in the next 2 years. Things were overvalued, and then there was a massive correction in 2018. And then the next couple of years, people started building new technologies, new products, started to get some adoption. And now we're seeing real products that are getting real usage. Still not at the levels predicted in 2017, but I think there's going to be steady growth in this year, 2021, as well in the next couple of years. And somewhere in the next 1 to 3 years, I think we're going to see absolutely explosive growth, where cryptocurrency technologies are implemented all over the world, have more offline tie-ins, have better online experiences that integrate with mainstream applications. There's going to be many, many more holders of cryptocurrencies. There's going to be people that are currently living in countries where they can't even have bank accounts. They're going to be adopting cryptocurrencies and are going to be starting to transact online. So I think the future for decentralized finance and decentralized commerce and these underlying technologies, blockchain and cryptocurrencies, is very, very, very bright. This is going to be an absolutely explosive growth trajectory over the next few years. But again, expect exponential growth is kind of hard to observe in the early stages, and then it grows in orders of magnitudes years later.
It's slowly and then suddenly.
Slowly and then very, very suddenly. Yeah.
Where are we now compared to the internet? So 2001 was the crash. Was 2001 the 2017 of crypto? And are we now in 2004-5, or you see this differently?
It's impossible for me to say, but I would say, somewhere around that range, right? It's in the phase where products are being built, users are starting to use them. There's a lot more innovation going on. The speed of technology development is much faster than it was before. Previously, a lot of it was just promises, right? It was just like, hey, this technology is going to be used and it'll be transformative. Now, some of this technology is being put to the test. Some products are working, many more are failing, but there's just so many new experiments and products that are being used to define real world use cases and solve real world problems. And this is, I think, like one of the golden ages of development in blockchain cryptocurrency. And we're going to see a lot of new products that start getting market share and start getting real traction.
What is the project apart from Origin Protocol you like to talk about to show to prove that we are onto something real now? Like for me, it's Uniswap, for instance.
Yeah, I think there are several that stand out in my mind. So there's the lending and money market products, and then there's these automated market maker products. Uniswap is one example, right? So I think on the money market side, you have products like Aave and Compound, as well as Cream Finance. These are products that are getting a lot of usage. People are borrowing and lending on these products, and there's quite a bit of usage. There are also products that can be used by Origin Dollar to earn yield. And then you also have what are known as automated market makers. And these are products that allow for the exchange and swapping of tokens. So Uniswap is probably the best example, but other examples include SushiSwap and Curve, which is an excellent product if you're dealing with only stablecoins. And so these are two categories of products that are doing really well, but there's also new products that are being formed and are starting to be tested in derivatives and hedging instruments, options, etc. And so there's going to be a lot of new products that are either already launched and beginning to gain traction or soon to be launched. Decentralized insurance is something else that's been a pretty interesting topic the last couple of months. So we're going to see a number of, I would say we're going to see, almost like a Cambrian explosion of products in the space, both on the finance side, but also, what we're really most focused on is, how do we connect people from a commercial standpoint, from the commerce side. And there's definitely fewer projects working on that specific problem, which is where we hope that we can have competitive advantage, first mover advantage, and really build something game changing for, the billions of people across the world that currently transact already. Let's help them do it in a better way.
So you are choosing, if I'm not mistaken, one or several insurance products for OUSD, so that people who hold them could optionally buy them.
Yeah,
that's correct, right?
That's correct. In fact, I believe we just announced our partnership with Cover Protocol.
Okay.
So that's going to be the first insurance provider, but we are also actively working with other projects, and the idea is to offer several options for insurance for OUSD.
So I'm going to have $10,000 in USD, and I want to protect them to a certain level, and I decide from whom to buy it, and then I'm protected at a certain level. But there are also decentralized ones where you don't have control if they offer any cover on Origin, on OUSD. Is that correct? Like,
sorry, I didn't quite catch that last question.
I think I've seen on Cover that somebody was mentioning that you can buy cover already for OUSD on Cover Protocol, and then I went to see it, it wasn't there anymore. So it seems to me that some protocols will offer cover on OUSD without asking permission to OUSD. Is that correct? Because I'm not.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. Yeah. Okay. We're going to be creating incentives so that we help subsidize some of those decentralized insurance providers, but other people can also just take the bet if they believe in OUSD. The more robust it is, then the easier it is for them to provide coverage with very low risk, and then earn fees from people that actually want coverage, right? And so the many different actors, insurance providers, as well as people that want insurance, they're going to be creating the ecosystem for these decentralized insurance marketplaces.
Just to give you an idea, because really I haven't looked into insurance at all so far. So if I want to cover 10,000 OUSD, and I want to cover them 100% for anything which happens apart from me losing the keys, is this possible, and how much does it cost?
I wouldn't be able to give you the exact cost. I mean, that's going to be determined by market rates, but obviously it'll be some fraction of the principal. You'll actually be able to check this up, shortly after our call, an announcement to understand the specific mechanics. I think, for you and your audience, it's probably easier just to go through that how-to manual that explains the step-by-steps.
But you can cover 100%, or you can cover only until a certain amount. How does it work in general, this kind of insurance?
So yeah, you'll there needs to be, someone that's on the other side, but for something like 10,000, you would be able to get 100% of that covered. Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, well, check it out. That's the last missing part, like for peace of mind, basically, of people getting into this. Okay, a very last question. If you have still 5 minutes.
Sure.
Today, what's working is DeFi. So it's finance, it's lending, it's borrowing, and it's digital tokens, etc., which is something most people are not even exposed to, right? I recently realized that maybe DeFi is going to eat everything. Let me explain by that what I mean by that. Once we manage to bring value from the real world on the internet, on the blockchain, so I can, for instance, digitize something else, maybe a listing on a booking platform, because this is what we do, right? So I can get my listing, which is on several platforms and on the centralized platform, and I can tokenize it or digitize it. And then DeFi will create a market for that. So my question is, do you see other kinds of values getting on DeFi, making DeFi no more DeFi, but like the centralized value more than the centralized finance? Do you see this as a direction?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So right now, DeFi is mostly the borrowing, lending, or trading of existing crypto assets. But this is just the beginning, right? The amount of real world assets or non-crypto digital assets is many, many, many times, thousands, maybe millions times more in total value than what's existing in DeFi today. So I'll give you a couple examples. One of my good friends, Blau, who's a DJ and also very actively involved in the cryptocurrency space, especially NFTs, just this Friday tokenized his latest song and is basically allowing token holders to each own a piece of his latest release, right? That's a very, very novel, interesting idea. And I think there's going to be more instances where digital goods and services are going to be tokenized and be split up and be able to be resold and traded and used as collateral in very, very interesting ways, right? Taking them away from these traditional very heavy-handed systems, in this case, music, where there are, again, so many mouths to feed that take away fees and marginalize the artists, into this new tokenized world where you can have a direct relationship with the producer. That's one example, right? And that's like a digital asset that can be tokenized on the blockchain. Another example, the full disclaimer, I'm starting to advise this new startup called Naos Finance, Naos Finance. But their idea is to bring small and medium business loans, real world loans, right, and tokenize them on the blockchain. And so they already have hundreds of millions of loans that are prepared to be tokenized. And once that happens, those real world assets will have digital representations in DeFi that, again, can be used for collateral, can be traded, can be permuted into different types of derivatives and things like that. And as these real world assets come onto the blockchain, that becomes super, super interesting, right? Both for what it means for offline and these existing systems, and into interfacing with new audiences, new capital, potentially capital from across the world that they didn't have access to. Someone in China potentially could buy a piece of a loan of someone from the United States without having to go through complicated government processes. So those real world assets, or again, these digital assets like music or potentially movies or TV shows in the future, could also be digitized and put on the blockchain. So there's a lot of growth area where DeFi is kind of like the infrastructure, and these crypto assets are just the very, very beginning and proof points. But huge, massive amounts of value are going to be placed on the blockchain in the next few years.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, we're looking into this, like in terms of the tokenizing availabilities of properties, of hotels, tokenizing whole apartments or hotels. And we're trying to see how this, if this is a way for bringing people on the blockchain. rather than promising, booking platform, which is years away.
Yeah.
And I'm getting more and more interested in this. And what you're just saying just confirms that. This is great. I need more five. Yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah, it makes markets more efficient if you can actually tokenize them, cut them into smaller pieces, and allow people from all over the world to participate. Versus saying, "Hey, this particular asset is only available to very wealthy accredited investors in this very particular investment vehicle," right? And so I think tokenization creates market efficiency. Market efficiency means economic growth for the entire world.
A last question from YouTube. So COVID-19 was a completely unexpected event that affected everybody's life, global economy, and crypto economy. If you have to name the top 3 disrupting events that in your mind could possibly crash the blockchain cryptocurrency space again, what those would be? And somebody else answered world market crash, vaccine failure, or Bitcoin getting hacked. So do you see any possible black swans coming to disrupt this space?
Well, the definition of a black swan is that it's very difficult to predict. If I could predict black swans, I would probably be running a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund on the side. But of those 3 things, I think you mentioned world economic failure, vaccine not working, and Bitcoin being hacked. So number one, I think, let's talk about them in reverse order. Bitcoin being hacked is I would say essentially nearly impossible at this point. There are so many Bitcoin holders and miners that a 51% attack to take over the network would be prohibitively expensive unless multiple governments banded together and said, "Hey, we're going to take down the network," right? And this would have to be a very, very coordinated attack, probably with national backing by China and the U.S. and dozens of countries in Europe to take Bitcoin down. So at this point, Bitcoin, I think, is extremely resilient, anti-fragile, censorship resistant, and is going to be here to stay. So very, very bullish on Bitcoin, and don't see a way that it's going to be hacked or taken down. I think the other 2 events, like world economic failure, I think we've already seen that the world has been negatively impacted by COVID-19, right? So small, medium businesses hit especially hard. Tourism has been hit really hard, hospitality, et cetera. A lot of companies have been suffering, but there's also opportunity for other companies that are more digital in nature. Remote work has increased. Tech companies have actually really increased market share, e-commerce, deliveries, et cetera. And so I think there has been a wealth transfer. I do think that we as humanity need to solve COVID-19 and bring many more businesses back online. And the faster that happens, the better. But I would also argue that there's kind of like a fine line, right? Like you want the overall economies to be booming because then there's more disposable income and then there's more money that will flow into cryptocurrencies and make Bitcoin or Ethereum or Origin token rally, right? But on the other hand, the more that we see, the world economy is faltering a bit and central governments printing money with reckless abandon, like the U.S. has printed, I believe, over a quarter or over a third of total U.S. dollars in the last year that have ever been in circulation, right? Throughout the couple hundred years that the U.S. has been in existence, that's the main problem, right? And so the more that these fiat currencies are devalued, there's more reason to invest in cryptocurrencies that are not controlled by central banks that won't be as devalued, right? And I think we've seen some of that with, again, institutions, businesses, and many more individuals moving money into cryptocurrencies, whether it's individual savings or on their corporate balance sheets even, right? Companies like Square adding Bitcoin to their balance sheet. And so I'm not entirely sure how the world economy will play out, but I do think almost in either extreme, cryptocurrencies will do pretty well. Vaccine failure is, I think, potentially the biggest contributor to the world economy doing poorly. Other than the very obvious, health and human sacrifices and unfortunate results of COVID, I think that's probably one of the biggest, other than those, the loss of human life, right? the economic impact is, the second degree pain that we're feeling from COVID. So that could happen. COVID could be here to stay for a while. It's really hard for me to say. My personal feelings are I hope that we can coordinate in the United States, but also across the world to get rid of COVID-19 as soon as possible. But it's really, really hard to say, right? And crypto is a great hedge when there's a lot of uncertainty in other markets.
There's a really last questions I'm asking also people to stop asking. Thank you.
Sure.
What about USA forbidding the trade of cryptocurrencies against US dollar because maybe they're afraid to lose their reserve status?
I think the regulatory situation is constantly being developed, and there are a lot of old rules that organizations like the SEC or FinCEN will be reevaluating. I don't really have that many strong predictions with the current administration change just yet. But my take on it is that cryptocurrencies are an inevitability, right? The world has a demand for decentralized, censorship-resistant, global permissionless currency that can be used for international trade and commerce, store of value, medium exchange. These are like real human needs and pain points, and cryptocurrencies are the ideal product to solve these, right? And so I think the different world governments will figure out what is the appropriate regulation, right? We obviously don't want to promote crazy amounts of money laundering or make it easier for drug dealers to profiteer, right? But the plus side to this technology, I think, is freer, open financial markets that allow greater participation, greater self-sovereignty over your own money. And I think those trade-offs are well worth kind of like navigating the regulatory landscape. It's just like many other technologies, right? So the creation of the internet brought out, probably a million advances that have benefited the world, but there were some negative things as well, right? Same thing with social networks, right? It connected more people, allowed people to chat, send videos, photos, get information more quickly, but it's also created some, polarization and content and fake news and things like that, right? And so with all disruptive technologies, there's good and there's bad. There needs to be, I guess, like an iterative approach that the users take, as well as the companies working in the space take, as well as governments that may or may not want to be involved in regulation have to take. But the technology itself is there, and it has a lot of promise, and I think there's a tremendous amount of user demand. And so governments will inevitably be required to figure out what is the right way to work with this technology.
Do you see the origin dollar becoming the world commerce currency in the,
That is certainly our ambition.
Wow, that would be amazing. That would be really great. Okay, Matt, thank you so much. We took more time than planned, so thank you for bearing with us. And yeah, good luck with everything.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
Really appreciate it. And thank you for the community for learning more about what we're doing here at Origin. We wouldn't be able to do any of this without you.
Thank you to everybody who listened. And this video is going to stay on YouTube. So I hope many of you will have the chance to look at it.